Okay. So, hi there. Welcome to the 13th episode of the Gutenberg Times Live Q&A. My name is Birgit Polly Haag, and I'm your host and the curator of Gutenberg Times. Thank you all for watching. It's great to have you. So today it's all about the freelancers and the business opportunities around Gutenberg and what other stories about freelancing we can tell you. Things are changing, but don't they always? And I'm thrilled to explore the space with the three strong freelance coaches, business leaders in the WordPress community, and each brought their own crystal ball, and we'll let you know what's next in Gutenberg world of business for small and large. I have for you Carrie Dills, freelance coach, WordPress developer, and consultant. She teaches freelancers to be fearless and hosts the podcast Office Hours FM. Matt Medeiros, longtime podcast host on Matt Report around the WordPress business community and beyond. He also works for Pagely and in his local startup community. Joe Casabono, front-end developer, Gutenberg teacher for freelancers, and podcast host on How I Built It. And no, this will not be another show on how to create a podcast. We do proper introduction in less than a minute. First, I want to read from you, faithful viewers and listeners. Thank you for attending the show on Zoom and YouTube, and please use the chat window to tell us where you're listening from. We're using Zoom Q&A feature later on. If you have questions, you can access us on the bottom of the screen, and also on the bottom you see the chat bubble for the chat, where we share our links for the show and what we're talking about, if I find them on the internet. If you're watching on YouTube, your chat window is on the right-hand side of the screen, well, this side. Let's use it and type in from which part of the world are you watching. Let's see. We are live now.
Probably one of the nicest intros anyone's ever given the three of us.
I know.
So groovy.
Yeah.
So, but let's get started. Today I'm going to switch around a bit. The WordPress contributors that I had previously on the show, that I will ask them about their day job, because most of them have a different job than contributing to WordPress, but not today, because our guests are serial entrepreneurs, and they work is their life and art. So we will talk about get an idea from them how to shut off the brain at the end of the day, so you can go and recharge for the next day. So Carrie, I'm so happy you agreed to come to the show today. Gutenberg definitely hasn't been the first major change in WordPress. You had to create new training and content and tutorials. So how much is it? Is that the 1,500 change? But tell us. So where do you live? What do you do for one? And how do you unwind?
I teach online courses from, like you mentioned, freelancer courses, but also a lot of WordPress and front-end development courses. To unwind, go just get outdoors, take a walk, sit out, watch the sunset with a beer and a book, and I'm a happy gal.
Good. Well, thank you. So Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation on the Matt Report last month. The last two episodes it's not the last two episodes, but that I listened to were the one with Paul Jarvis about his new book, Company of One, and with Justin Reeves on creating online and putting yourself out there. Also about the false starts and when to quit. I think these all we all need to sign on that. So you work for Pagely, the first managed hosting company.
That's what the ancients say. They say that they were the first managed hosting company, and they were, in fact. If you listen to Josh Strebel's story, they created before anybody else.
All right. Yeah. So what do you where do you live, and what do you for fun, and how do you unwind?
I am deep in the heart of Patriots and Red Sox country, just an hour south of Boston. What do I do to unwind? I have two crazy sons. And I can't unwind until about 10 o'clock at night. At that point, it's just going straight under the covers and into bed. So that's what I do these days, working day to day at Pagely, create some content on the side over at the podcast and the YouTube channels, and enjoy my wonderful children.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for having on the show. I'm just saying hi to Tom from San Francisco and from Naples, here hometown. Aaron, hi, hi from British Columbia, and Brad, hi from Philly. Bob joins us from Vegas, and Anya. Annie is also here from Fort Myers. Disclosure, Annie and Anne are co-organizers on our local meetup, so I'm glad I can have them on the show and on YouTube. Hi, Ben from North Carolina. Glad you joined us. So, Joe, you and I started 2018 right out of the gate with Gutenberg content. And you and Zach created your first version of the Gutenberg courses. We had some great fun on the Gutenberg Live show about a year ago. You also made your podcast host on How I Built It. Always worth a listen. Thanks. You actually mentioned Company of One first. So thank you for putting that out there. But you do a whole pool of business endeavors. But why don't you catch up on the basics first? Where you live, what you do for fun, and how do you get out of the fast lane of the day?
Yeah, I actually like that you mentioned that I mentioned Company of One first. I like to think that Matt gets all of his ideas for the Matt Report from me. So I am born and raised New Yorker. So I grew up in the heart of Yankees and Giants country, to combat Matt again. But I actually live near Philadelphia now. So I am a transplant New York sports fan in a very passionate city for Philly sports. To unwind, I have a daughter that I like to hang out with in the evenings. She's a lot of fun, and she's getting her own opinions now, which is excellent and frustrating. But she takes after me, I guess, in that regard. But when I unwind, I like to smoke a cigar, read a book. I dedicate time every day, about an hour every day to read. And that's basically how I unwind. I want to spend time away from the screen because I spend most of my time in front of the screen. Multiple screens, actually.
Oops, you're muted.
So I always get this. You're muted. Yeah, read an hour a day. That's a really good thing to do, but it's very hard to fit this in. And I'd rather watch TV and kind of thing. Yeah. So So now business opportunities around Gutenberg. The research team had a conversation with some users of WordPress, amongst them the people that build sites for others. They are not necessarily and so that's kind of one of the definitions of freelancers. So they invest the time learning the ins and out of a plugin and a theme. So that's how they describe them. And then they use it repeatedly on every site that they build. Learning a new approach or paradigm is a big investment for them. It's a major, Gutenberg has been a major disruptions of their known ways. And so, but how can we turn this around? Yeah. Who wants to jump first? What do you think, Carrie?
I like how you said, who wants to jump first? Well, I guess I'll go ahead and jump. I think that the discussion has already been debated and is water under the bridge now in terms of the way that Gutenberg was rolled out, maybe a little bit before its time. And so at this point, it really is, if you want to move forward with WordPress, you adapt to the block editor, you adapt to teaching the block editor, to supporting it if you're creating themes or plugins, or creating your own blocks. So I have a backpack full of blocks.
There's a hashtag 280 blocks.
It's heavy.
Yeah. Joe, what do you think?
So, I mean, looking at this, the study that you shared with us, I am a little not surprised and then a lot happy, because this is the audience that I decided to target with my own online courses. I have a formal education in like I have a master's in software engineering. I don't think you need that to build websites. And I've been preaching that for the last year or so. I used to be dead against, oh, page builders are cheating and this and that, but now I use them primarily, and unless I need to do something super fancy where I need to write the code myself, I try to rely on the tools that exist because they've evolved and they're very good. And Gutenberg is another, we'll say, another hat in that ring, right? There's a fundamental difference between that and some of the other tools, but I think we're moving in such a way that we want to make editing a website as visual as possible for as many people as possible.
I agree.
I agree. You're not fun.
Both the chords. No, I mean, I really, it's great. In fact, doing this show is the first time I saw this article, or this post on Make. And it's good to see that there is some forward thinking in this. And it just makes me, remember that I think it was called like the Freelancers Council or Small Business Council, something like that. That was supposed to be formed many years ago. And this is great that there's at least some concerted effort to think about the freelancers and developers, or how they use the self-taughts and stuff like that, the labels that they use in this article. I'm glad that somebody's forward thinking about this, because I feel like we are the ones that really uplift a lot of the adoption of WordPress. So it's important that there's a little bit of love given towards the freelancers direction, for sure. Especially in the face of other platforms like a Shopify that actually has a legitimate partnership program that actually pairs up with agencies and developers and makes inroads that way. I think WordPress is smart to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you. So the team, what they also did was they kind of mapped out the journey of page building, and others than the bloggers and the DIY business owners, business site owners, the hardest part for a freelancer is to start out, with how do I start the website to go out there, and some of the themes. So they use a theme that is that they adopt with certain plugins. So how the rollout of Gutenberg will or has kind of disrupted some of the sites because the theme weren't compatible, but the theme was not the problem. I think the plugins were the problems more than anything else. But how can they work through this? I know a lot of freelancers haven't even touched it yet. I talked with some of them at our WordPress meetup, and also on the organizing team for WordPress US, WordCamp US, and some of them have not even started exploring Gutenberg for their clients. But what should they do start out with? What would you say is the first start?
I would say in this chart,
Matt?
I was just going to say in this chart, number 13, where it says get paid, should actually be on number 1. And then have some more get paid along the way would be like the first thing that I would, adjust, with this. Yeah.
I think a lot of, had the initial fear that when they approach the client or the client come back to them and said, oh, my site is broken, you need to fix it, and that they wouldn't get paid when they have to fix because they put it they put the client on WordPress, and so now it's their responsibility. I
would disagree. It's not necessarily their responsibility unless, first of all, if any freelancer takes responsibility for WordPress core in your contract, stop that because you don't know what core is going to roll out, and you want to make sure that in the case of things like the block editor and how much that changes, that there's not an expectation that you just go in and make all these sites backwards compatible or bring them up to speed. So that would be step one. Don't promise that. And if your clients are asking for changes, then educate them about, what it takes, and certainly charge for it.
Step 0 on that is have a contract. I know a lot of freelancers who don't, right? And I get it. You're doing a small job. It's hey, I know this person, I want to do this, but you need to, a contract is not, it doesn't have to be some intense legalese where you're immediately at odds with your client. It is a clear statement of work, what's expected of you, what's expected of them, and it makes everything crystal clear. So people need to stop thinking of contracts as like this thing that will protect them in some intense legal battle, which it will, but it's really just the clearest form of communication that you could have with your clients. So if you have a good contract that says, I'm launching this site, I'll support it for 2 weeks. If you need anything else, we should consider a maintenance package. If something breaks, we should consider this. If you need updates, we should consider this. So having a good contract is really the core of any successful freelance, or really any business endeavor, right? If you're entering into a contract with somebody, the terms should be clear and expectations should be fully managed.
Yeah, and Patricia just posted in the chat window. So that's the hell I'm in now. A few changes on a site that I did not build. I think that's a clear conversation with the client, going back and say, yeah, until I logged in, I didn't know what I was expected. So we need to adjust our scope of work and see how we can handle that together and make the best out of it. Yeah. So what is the first step in kind of testing client side? So the client is okay, no, there has something changed, and they just want to future-proof their site and then upgrade to 5.0 kind of, yeah. What would you say what the first step would be to talk to?
I think, setting the foundation, and a lot of this is sort of the step 0, step 1 thing is, if you're a freelancer, it's getting the customer to understand that WordPress is a, living, breathing piece of software. Like, this is your operating system for your website. And it's not just this thing that just sits there dormant, and there will be changes and improvements that come over time, making sure that they understand that. And a lot of folks, freelancers that is, or consultants or smaller agencies, I'm not a developer, so I can't speak too heavily into it, but having a sane development workflow, a staging site, Git-based repo, something that you're leaving comments in and commenting your code, and you can always fall back to certain revisions and test different updates. Having a sane development workflow is something that I think a lot of people in the beginning often overlook because it is kind of complicated, depending on what you're using, but also charging for it and making sure that the customer understands the value of having that. I remember starting my agency and early on not knowing that, but as I got more mature in this space, letting customers know that, look, we have a staging site that we're also maintaining for you. So if you're somebody who sells support plans or something like that, letting them know it's not just the support of the code, but we've also got the staging site for you. We've got a Git repo for you. This is all stuff that costs us money, and whether or not you're line iteming that is totally up to you. But if you're putting it all in the value for your customers, say, hey, look, if shit ever hits the fan, we have well-documented code revisions, a whole workflow down. We know what we were committing. If you're trying to get me down on price, is the next person that you're going to have something like this, or this is the type of value that we bring to the table. So, having all that stuff buttoned up, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, is smart for any freelancer or consultant.
And Joe, you did a few courses or webinars with, I think, iTheme and some others about what's the checklist for testing a site for Gutenberg or Gutenberg compatibility. So what's first on your list apart from the contract and from, you have a staging site, kind of what's next?
Yeah, so staging site definitely first on my list. I'll also just say that, like, as a site builder, as a developer myself, I can tell you that we're all like eternal optimists. Yeah, it's not going to take me that long. Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard. Those are things that you could think, but you should not say, right? Because there's a lot of unknowns. And I know it's bitten me before, but the number one thing.
Who hasn't?
Yeah, right, exactly. Number one thing is have a staging site and upgrade to 5.0. Have a backup of your site, but the staging site should serve as that because you're not working off your live site. Upgrade to 5.0, see what happens. Take a walk through the front end. Nothing should affect the user side of the website at that point. And then start changing things. If things break, install the classic editor and then do a deeper site audit, right? The classic editor is a Band-Aid that's been put out by the powers that be, the core team, because they knew that this upgrade process could cause a lot of headache. I mean, WordPress is 15 years, 16 years old at this point.
Oh yeah, 16.
Yeah. So 16 years focused, or 15 years, we'll say, focused on backwards compatibility. And then 5.0 could break all that. With the classic editor, it won't. So
cool. Yeah. Carrie, how do you test the theme for, is it right for the Gutenberg editor? Does it have, yeah.
Yeah, so I like, just to reiterate what my comrade said, you definitely want to do these things on a staging site. But the one thing I would say, Core has come out and said they will support the Classic Editor plugin through, I think, either the end of 21 or the end of 22. And most, I mean, depending on the type of client site, if you're doing brochureware sites, small, simple sites, frankly, there's no reason for your clients probably to even spend the money for you to go. Now, certainly keep this WordPress up to date, but there's no reason you can't just continue using the classic editor as is. And by the time support for that ends, well, it'll be time for your client to, refresh their website after. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, but.
So we have a first question. Anya has a question. So on my first attempt with a post in the block editor, I loved the experience and the post looked great, but on the iPad, it had my picture galleries covering over the copy. So I ended up installing the classic editor plugin because I needed to get the post published and sent out to the subscribers. Has anyone encountered this? It is a site I didn't design, and the developer that built it is still on the site, and apparently the theme has not been updated. So maybe that's the problem?
Sounds like the theme is the problem, because a lot of the some of the things that Gutenberg introduced, especially around photos and wide images, are not, the styles for that would not be included in older themes. So unless a developer has updated the theme to include those styles, then you might get some wonky layouts like what it sounds like you're describing. So those could be addressed in the CSS, maybe, just throwing a div around it, or I don't know, I'd have to look at it, but.
Right.
So yeah. To be clear, this is on the front end of the site and not in the editor, right? Because one of the things that I do appreciate with the new block editor is that they seem to have iPad use in mind a little more than some other tools I've used. I'm trying to travel, be iPad only lifestyle. And that's exposed a lot of issues in other tools I use, I guess. But yeah, I mean, exactly what Carrie said. It sounds like that the theme hasn't been updated, and a little bit of CSS will probably go a long way there.
All right. So we have another question. Patricia has a problem with some custom post types. How would you address those?
Well, with the custom post types, if the Gutenberg editor is not enabled on it, you would need to update the custom post type to turn the REST API on. And I forget the exact syntax.
I think
I think it's like REST true or something like that.
It's show underscore in REST.
Yeah.
Underscore.
Yeah.
And then
So if the block editor is not turning on there, then that's going to be the issue. Otherwise, it'll likely again be on the theme side, and that'll take some CSS.
Yeah. Yeah. So what other questions do people have? We are here for you. I have what happened with a few sites that I maintain is that we started a kind of rolling, switching over from a page builder that has on shortcode to a different theme that does not use a page builder. And we just had to recreate the pages, but it was very fast with the block editor. And it was easier for the site owner to actually manage their own pages. But I ran into some hybrid things. And one is that some plugins that offer custom post types are not yet built or have that show in REST or for the block editor. And they also have some things that are not yet built into the block editor. So the system goes back to the classic editor when you open up either the event or the new campaign or something like that. Some plugins have still the shortcodes, and those work too. But would you go and if a freelancer has created shortcodes to convert them to the block editor, and what is all kind of involved in that? How can they start kind of getting up to speed with that?
Matt hasn't talked in a while. Matt, what do you think?
These questions are for somebody way smarter than me. I would just hire somebody to do this. I mean, switching over from short codes to Gutenberg blocks, I don't know. What I would do is I would copy and paste. That's what I've got for that. Fortunately, I don't know any other way, to do that. No other wizardry in my tool belt.
Well, I can go back and ask, is the client asking you to make that conversion? If not, don't. Because, I mean, you don't want to do work that you're not being asked to do. And
for sure.
Not going to be paid to do.
Yeah, from a business perspective, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
If it's like your plugin or something and you want to add value, I think definitely make the conversion and definitely reuse as much code as you possibly can, right? I know you might have to learn React, or maybe there's a way to use something like advanced custom fields along with that, because ACF has a pretty nice way of creating custom blocks without having to know JavaScript. But to echo Carrie and Matt, don't make more work for yourself. That's probably something that the three of us do. I certainly do it. But don't make more work for yourself. And don't, if the client's asking for it, then you should map it out from what's the shortest path to what's the best path. And the best path is probably writing a native block from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you encountered, so between learning React, and staying on the classic editor, there are some stages in between. So where do we start? So there are some tools out there that let you create blocks that are not programming wise. Yeah. So have you tested any of that? Like Block Lab, I think is one. ACF comes out is in beta 4 with their block builder, site builder. Oh God, yeah. We're having a whole new language here. Yeah. Do you have any experience? I think you did some experimentations with Genesis and all. Carrie?
I haven't tested any. Atomic Blocks is the only block library I've tried, but it's not. I don't think it's what you're talking about, like building out custom blocks. Mm-hmm. I guess the only thing I could intelligently add to that, because from a technical perspective, maybe one of the other guys has tried it out, but if you are using the block editor, there's a classic editor block. So say you've updated to WordPress 5, Gutenberg is enabled. It's not going to go theoretically, it should not break the layout of any of your existing pages. And when you go into edit one, all your content that's in there is going to be stuffed into a classic editor block. So you could just on a page by page basis, experiment with changing that over to, an image block or a paragraph block or heading block, et cetera. And there's actually an automatic, I think there's a little option on the classic editor block that says convert to blocks, and it'll do that for you. And it's so far I've found that actually works pretty well.
Yep, I found the same thing. As far as creating your own blocks, I have used ACF, and it was pretty great. I've come up with a couple of my own kind of internal blocks, and it's nice because again, as a developer, every other week someone's like, you got to learn this new JavaScript library, learn this one, learn Angular, learn whatever, learn vanilla JavaScript, learn what's a Vue is in Gatsby. Like those are new ones too. And so I've been a little slow to react.
That's one.
Thank you. But PHP right in my wheelhouse. I've been writing that since my freshman year of college. And so ACF has pretty clear documentation on how to do it. how to integrate it, and then add the stylings and the display, all with these custom fields you've created. So I think that's a really nice intro to get your feet wet creating your own block without having to learn React.
Yeah, and there are, Matt, do you want to say something? Or it sounded.
I mean, if I were, I have a lot of friends that are building like SaaS businesses and like software unrelated to WordPress, but they were in WordPress at one time. And like Joe was saying, there's so much like trendy stuff happening that if I were somebody just starting out, like it would be frustrating for me to like want to like have to figure out how to do things the WordPress way and then have to pick like all these other JavaScript frameworks. And I would just feel lost if I were somebody just, and then of course, layer on top, Gutenberg development and diving into that pool. I would just say, like Joe was saying, like PHP still, he's super comfortable with, roll with what you're comfortable with. And it can get kind of distracting if you're always going, I saw how many tweets did I see? It was like a tweet fest over Gatsby about a month ago. It's all you heard. And I was just like, I can't keep up with this stuff. Like how much stuff are we going to keep switching to?
Yeah. No, I totally get this. Yeah, I had the same thing. So what's the purpose of it? Yeah. So we get a few comments in our chat window. So Brad from wpsites.net, I don't know the sites is using. Marcus said, hi, Marcus. Is using ACF now with a lot of his customizations. And then Bob said that he has been using Caxton. It's similar to Atomic Blocks, but has useful features and page layouts and page grids. There is a whole post on the Gutenberg Times, a little self-promotion here, with 83 plugins for the plug editor. And I divided that up into 6 categories. One is the block collections, and there are 28 in them. Some of them are very early ones, like the Atomic Block and Co-Block from Rich Tabor. And then the single-purpose blocks that I like very much because of one piece and does that very well. And then a section for e-commerce, how to integrate it with Gumroad and eCwid. Do I pronounce that right? And also BigCommerce and WooCommerce, the blocks in there. And then the third section, or fourth or fifth section, whatever, is tools. And that is how to do not only blocks, but also page layouts. Yeah? And Caxton is one of them, where you can actually create block templates for Gutenberg and your website. So what else have you found useful in your explorations on Gutenberg? And we're going to go into the value. Okay, how can a freelancer then say the value of Gutenberg for their customers, when they want to switch or have to switch, or why? What is the answer there that you would tell people?
I actually have maybe a preamble for Matt, because I think, Matt, you're probably in the best position to answer this. You work with a lot of developers, I suspect, over at Pagely. Do you find that like their clients are asking specifically for Gutenberg? No. In fact, a majority of at least the customers that we deal with
have asked us to just be on version holds to update. And in fact, we just updated a majority of the fleet of customers to the new editing experience quite recently. So.
Gotcha.
You have a fleet of customers?
Well, we refer to the fleet of servers as a fleet. Well, inside baseball talk, Hey. What shirt are you wearing there, Carrie? Speaking of Pagely.
Hey,
there it is.
Free Pagely swag. Piggybacking on what Joe said, I think is an important point. I would be really surprised if clients are asking for Gutenberg by name, or for the block editor by name, or even WordPress by name. A lot of times, people just want the end result. They're not necessarily concerned with how you get there.
Yeah.
So the way I would sell it to a new client is I wouldn't even sell it. I would just say, this is the thing I'm giving you. To current clients who might be on 4.9 and they're not sure if they should pay you to upgrade, I would position it as, here's how you manage your site now. Here's how we can improve that and make it easier without it costing you any extra money in plugins or subscriptions, right? Because Beaver Builder and Divi and Elementor and these page builders came out of a need that it was kind of hard to manage really nice, complex content without littering your editor with shortcodes. So if you could alleviate some of that with the block editor instead of having to pay for something like Divi, then you say, hey, you pay me once and it'll save you at least this amount of money over the next few years because we've switched to a more native solution.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add, because in my local meetup, some of the discussion that comes up, well, of course, like the Gutenberg debate aside, like it's important that this core experience does exist, right? It's important that Gutenberg experience does exist in some shape or fashion in WordPress. But when a lot of people come up and say, okay, I get this whole Gutenberg thing and I can build pages using this, why would I need sort of a Beaver Builder or an Elementor? And even in that discussion, there are many components to consider when picking between a Beaver Builder or an Elementor. And if you looked at it plainly as like which platforms are going to go in which direction, I would argue that when you look at something like Elementor that has surpassed many people's expectations in terms of install base, user count, I mean, 2 million plus in WordPress.org, it's pretty phenomenal, eclipsing what Beaver Builder had because they had a huge head start on Elementor. I would look at that, even that comparison, to say, well, Beaver Builder isn't rushing every single feature, out the door. They're not trying to put every single bell and whistle into their platform, which Elementor is doing, and it's working for them. It's building a business. But what does the future hold for Elementor as a page builder, right? Because we have to look at this as an end user or a consultant and say, what's best for my customer? Do I put them on core WordPress experience and never add in another page builder? And these features are just great for them. And I know that as crazy as it might be updating WordPress in the future, this is a sane path that they can follow. Or I look at what maybe extended features I need, and Beaver Builder fits that mold, and I can feel safer and securer that Beaver Builder is going to take this path, right? They're more money than Elementor. They're not going gangbusters in terms of user adoption, but I know that it seems like they're going to stay in that more like solid business model where Elementor is just like skyrocketing. And who knows, right? Who knows who comes and scoops up a company like that, or they change their pricing model or their licensing model. And then you really have to think about your customer when you make these jumps. Where do they fit, and what's the longevity of the company that you're aligning your customers with? Because they're all core components of building a website. In a year's time or 2 years' time, that product you picked is the heartbeat of that entire website. So very important to look at any of those companies or brands and what path they might go on in a couple years from now.
I'm muted. We have a few more questions, and I'm going to take it from the top. Anya said, this sounds interesting. Which part, right? With having multiple block libraries installed, like Cadence blocks, Ultimate add-ons for Gutenberg, and so on. Has anyone come across any conflicts? And I don't know if you try to have multiple block collections, because one block from one collection, the other one from other collections. Yeah, do you want to say anything about that, Joe?
Yeah, I quietly redesigned Casabona.org last week, my personal site, and I thought I'm going to use only Gutenberg and related plugins. I'm not going to use a page builder, and that went out the window very quickly. Not that it's not good, but the homepage, I couldn't get the homepage where I wanted it without a page builder. But as a result of that, I ended up installing Atomic Blocks, Co-Blocks, and Ultimate add-ons for Gutenberg. And I ran into, so I had a conflict, and I don't know if it is related to my WordPress install or some other thing I'm using, or if the three just don't play nice together. But whenever I refreshed a page, like one of the blocks was just like broken, and it was like, you need to resolve this, and then it was resolved to just plain HTML, and I couldn't get it back to its block state, which I know HTML, but it's frustrating, right? Because that's a very broken looking thing on a thing that should not look broken. So I don't know if it was related to the 3 being installed. I didn't dig that deep into it, but it is an issue that I ran across trying to use those 3 things. At least at the same time, I was using those 3 things together, if that makes sense.
Kara, did you run into any of that? Did you do some experimentation there?
I have not experimented with combining multiple block libraries.
Okay. So Cheryl Coe says, I'm concerned at guidelines about separating content from design are harder to explain.
That's totally legitimate. That it's definitely blurred the line. That's something I've always appreciated about WordPress, was the very clear delineation between content and design, and Gutenberg kind of muddies those waters.
And here's your answer. Just live. Yeah, we're all concerned about that. So Anne from Castlef has this, has there been done any site speed comparison between Gutenberg, and that goes back on what Matt said, Gutenberg versus Elementor versus Beaver Builder versus Divi. And her experience, my experience, she says, she writes, with Black page fillers is that they are bears and slow down the site.
I haven't seen any recent comparisons. I know Pippin Williamson did a really great look at page builders 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But page builders generally add a lot of extra HTML markup in order to get the design and layout that they want on the page. Gutenberg, on the other hand, if you were to go look at the code, basically it's just adding in a lot of comments, HTML comments in the source code. So performance wise, I think Gutenberg's going to come out on top of page builders in terms of how complex the markup is. But that's my untested guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen any comparison either, but I would think that because Elementor and Page Builder and Divi, they came so far ahead of Gutenberg in terms of when they implemented some kind of page building, they needed to come up with the infrastructure code base and the whole architecture of the page builder themselves. And each one of them has a different approach to that. But they need to put it on top of WordPress, so it adds definitely some code there. But I'm sure that there are. I have seen a few sites that are very, very fast on the front end. They're only slow in the back end when you change content, just because they are cached very well on the site. So I really would love to see a comparison about that. I think a year ago, one of the hosting companies did that, but that was before Gutenberg was in core. And it was also before the version 4 point something of Gutenberg, where they did the whole performance improvement, where they're kind of 600 times faster. I don't know how that goes, but it had a very high. So that was really interesting. So, yeah.
I saw a video from a competing page builder that's sort of breaking into the market. They've been around for about a year now, and he recently did a video where he just sort of compared, of course, bias to his product against Beaver Builder, Elementor, and Divi. And Divi by far brought the most page weight, and then it was Elementor, and then Beaver Builder, and of course, his product. But they're all. It was a simple test. It was uncached. It was just like one headline and a button on a page. And it just basically showed all the extra JavaScript that they were loading, to complete that one little, display of a headline and a button. And that was sort of his argument. Granted, it wasn't cached, which he talked about. But it was sort of down in that order. It went Divi, Elementor, Beaver Builder, and then his product.
And I think there's an important thing to think about here too, right? Is that, the points y'all made are really great because when you add something, you do add weight. But on one of my sites, I'm using a StudioPress theme and no page builder on the homepage, at least. And the performance was really bad. And I don't think that's a result of StudioPress. They do good work. But the problem was I was using a giant image that I thought I had compressed that I did not compress. So that's where I
hate
lost.
when that happens.
Yeah, like I uploaded it. One of the plugins I was using like failed because the image was too big for the image compression plugin to compress. And so I lost a lot of I lost a score, whatever it was, a grade on the page speed test. So I think yes, whenever you add something of the same complexity of a page builder to anything, you're going to add some weight. But first consider the type of content you're adding, right? If you have like a 4K background video that plays automatically when the site's loaded, it doesn't matter what page builder you're using, or if you're not using a page builder at all, that's going to kill the front end. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah. The Gutenberg cover block now you can use video there. No.
which means that people are going to say Gutenberg makes my site slow, right?
Yeah,
but it's
right,
not.
right.
It's not Gutenberg.
Yeah. So Marcus has a good point, and that was bringing it back. Why Gutenberg and why in WordPress and why in Core? He writes, "We are deathly afraid on third-party block-in. So we tried to go slow and only using Genesis and Atomic Block for now. We never use page builders because of, again, lock-in. But it's kind of adding complexity. But it's with every decision that you make on somebody's website is to add plugins and that you go a little bit closer to that content lock-in. And I have always felt that Gutenberg is, and I'm evangelist, Gutenberg Times for a long time, because I found that with the theme forest with the page builder, you have pretty much a closed system like a Wix or Squarespace, with just a larger community, but you are not able to switch out the theme. You're not able to switch out the page builder and lose and keep your content. So that lock-in was really, it was already in WordPress, and it made it a closed system as opposed to an open system. And with the architecture now coming in Gutenberg for the blocks, it's much easier now to extend it, but still stay within the ecosystem and not have that lock-in there. But I don't know how that shakes out with the blocks and the content. Yeah.
I have an aside. Like, one of the things that I recently tweeted about was it's 2019 and I can't find a theme that I like. And
what was that about?
And when I tweeted that out, I had people coming, from Elementor camp, Beaver Builder camp, like all these camps. Oh, you can just build it yourself. You can do this. You can do that. Look what Elementor just introduced. You can, do whatever you want with all these squiggly lines. Dude, I don't want to design my own website. And I think, if you think back to the WordPress ecosystem and opportunities 5 years ago, themes was it. Like, themes was just massive business, and there was a lot of great selection, and the web was getting more modernized, and we kept seeing new designs, and it was great. But over the last, few years, I think with the introduction of page builders and just business in general being a little bit more competitive now with themes, that a good quality selection of theme shops is hard to find right now because it's expensive to create a theme. I know I used to run a theme company myself. And I think we're losing out on a lot of high quality themes right now. It's all shifting to page builders, like do it yourself, but I don't want to because I'm not a designer. And I hope that with the Gutenberg maturing in WordPress core, maybe, just maybe, we'll see a reintroduction of high quality themes, even if it's a higher price. Like, if I found the perfect theme for $150, $199, I'm buying it. If it fits to what I want, I'm taking it, right? I don't want to just, start with a template, a blank canvas, and then have the ability to do it myself. I'll be here. I'll never launch.
Yeah.
Would you say that designing your own theme, you'd rather have like 84 root canals in a row?
Something like that.
But bringing it back to the business opportunities. So what is, if money, time, and so on, what's the big audacious goal that you would say a freelancer could go for in 2 or 3 years? Yeah. Right now it's transition, but what's in 2 years? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think people should create themes that can be compatible, for these page builders, or if somebody wants to just focus on one that's, ripe for Gutenberg, but that's ever changing. But, if you do latch on to something like a Beaver builder, it's just thinking about a theme in its entirety, for what a majority of people will use for their website, right? So for example, so it's not just about the homepage or just the blog post, but it's forward thinking about, lead generation, email capture forms, call to actions, like thinking about all the things that, most of us go and build a website and we see like the homepage, we're like, okay, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And then you start to like customize a landing page for maybe like Joe, who's doing like courses and selling digital products. And it's like, it's missing everything for that. And now Joe has to sit there and be like, geez, I have to make my own buttons. I have to make my own product pages. Like thinking about, there was a theme called thesis at one point, many years ago, right? Many years ago, but it was a complete like digital publisher at the time. It was a complete digital publisher. It was a blog, it had landing pages. It was meant for marketers. Of course, the web has totally different now. But in that same vein, like great typography, great for a blog, but also great for lead capture, selling digital product, displaying podcasts, like that whole like typical internet marketing, what every business has to do in terms of content creation today. It's just not being there's no well-rounded solution that I'm finding. Here's a homepage, here's a blog post. And then, oh, by the way, use Elementor or Beaver Builder to go nuts. And it's just like, I don't want that,
Joe, what do you think? Or Carrie,
Carrie, you want to go first or?
Yeah, I'll hop in.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of business opportunity, looking less at necessarily how can I sell my clients on Gutenberg or talk them into doing these updates, or like make it less about the feature that you're selling about to the client and make it more about how you're leveraging the tools to make your own process faster, which therefore increases your profit margin on projects. So like Genesis has come out with a couple of updates that make setting up a new theme easier. So in other words, you can automatically import demo content. It sets up the front page in blocks for you. Things like that maybe it used to take 15 minutes and now it takes you 5 minutes. And that may seem like, kind of teeny tiny, but when you add up all those little incremental minutes that you can save by using block-based layouts or reusable blocks, you can speed up your development lifecycle quite a bit.
Man, I'm really glad you went first. Well, that's a fantastic point, because if you are a freelancer who is trading dollars for hours, every minute you waste on your process costs you money. So yeah, get those tools right. The thing that I was going to add was, what I'm sure when we all first started making websites, it was pretty simple. I want a website. Like I want to be on the World Wide Web or whatever. And you would go and use HTML and CSS and make a website and then call it a day. Now there's so many tools. Well, I want this. I want to make sure it does that. I believe that as freelancers, we're in the business of educating our clients first and then using some technical solution almost second. I'm not going to it's like they're very close, because I've been in a lot of circles where people are like, my clients are dumb and they don't understand this. And I think that is a failure on the person saying it and not on the client. If I went to a restaurant and I said, I don't know, this fish is cold, or my steak is raw, right? Or it's too rare. Would the chef be like, this guy is stupid? Like, this is how you're supposed to eat steak? I don't know. I don't cook steak. I mean, so I think there's a solid opportunity for us to teach our clients what's going on, train them, and give them, empower them to update their website in a very easy way. And I think that if you do that, you'll get high praise from your clients, which results in referrals for more work.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have to kind of contradict you a little bit there, Joe. Yes. Because I'm not in the business educating my clients. The clients want from me a business solution, and they don't care pretty much what tools I use, but they want that to run, right? So if they come to me, but I also need to explain them how online business works. Yeah. So when they want a form, I'm not only educating them on this is how the form looks, but also what's the follow-up, what's the second lead, and these kind of things. I have found that walking them through there is much more important and much more beneficial for them than just making them update their own website. Because our agency, we have people for that, so they can do the business. But when I hear Matt and Joe and Carrie talk about freelancing, and all your work kind of is surrounded by the best way to stay in business is actually to get into a niche for a certain market and do this very, very well. And Gutenberg could actually be your ticket in with the combination what Matt said, that there is not a good theme out there. And then when the theme is there and I like it, I don't know how to go from there. Yeah. How does a restaurant theme look? Yeah. What do I do with the menu? What do I do with my locations? What do I do with my changing menus every day kind of thing? If you provide that kind of all around business model for your client, then you're probably, and Gutenberg is much easier to do that than, when you already done that, but if you kind of, and then go back to the speed up your own processes. So, so what's in the crystal ball for you? Do you have any announcements? We are past our minute to kind of cut it. I don't see any more questions there, and that's pretty much where we are. And kind of wrapping that up. This is wonderful. It was a great 360 on the freelance part, not only for Gutenberg, but how to set up a business, and so much value. Thank you so much. I have two more questions for you. Do you have any announcements? And how can people get in touch with you? Matt, you want to start?
MattReport.com. You can find me there, my podcast, and Pagely.com if you're looking for managed WordPress hosting.
And your announcement?
Oh, I'm having our third child in August.
Whoa!
And Carrie is going to come to be a babysitter for about 2.5 years.
Oh, Aunt Carrie. Well, my announcement is that I'm going to go be a live-in nanny for the Medeiros family. And you can find me over at carriedills.com. That's kind of the hub for all of my activities online.
All right. You can find me over at casabona.org and on Twitter at jcasabona. I don't have any announcements as exciting as Matt's, so we'll make that.
Well, we do the unexciting ones too. Yeah, this show, there's an equal opportunity.
That's true. Well, I mean, if we're focusing on opportunities for freelancers, and I feel like diversifying your income streams is an important one. So this year, I'm really going to focus on educating people on how to build podcasts, because I feel like that's a really good niche I've gotten into, and there's very little competition. But I really want to focus on that because I feel like it's where blogging was. Like in 2004, right when people were really starting to get into it and want to know how to do it well. So, and thank you, Cheryl, for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Well, congratulations to the Medeiros family, Cheryl says, and Anya as well. Thank you very much for joining us, viewers and listeners, and your great questions. If you have more questions, you can always send them to me via email to Pauli@Gutenberg.com, Pauli@gutenbergtimes.com. The recording will be available later today on the YouTube channel, and we'll publish the transcript and the audio later this month on Gutenberg Times. The next Gutenberg Live Q&A in the series will be April 5th with trainers for site owners who will discuss what it means teaching and learning Gutenberg as a content creator and DIY small business owner. With me will be Sean Heskett from WP100.com, Angela Bowman, and Bud Krause, the joy of WP. Hope to see you all there, and bring a friend. This show is sponsored by Polysystems and our generous patrons on Patreon. Just remember, patrons on Patreon get first dibs on the questions for future live Q&As. So thanks again, Matt, Carrie, and Joe. It's been great. Enjoyed talking to you. And bye-bye.
Thank you.
You all stay warm, be well, and good luck. Bye.
I always get angry when a Floridian says stay warm.
Well, I went...